Most people think of the brain and the body as separate systems. The brain does the thinking, the body does the doing. But in reality, the brain and body are part of a continuous feedback loop. They're constantly communicating, influencing, and shaping each other. When we understand and leverage that relationship, we can unlock powerful improvements in our health, our focus, and even our emotional resilience. Let's start with something simple. When you feel anxious or nervous, what happens in your body? Your heart rate goes up, your muscles tense, maybe your stomach feels tight or your palms get sweaty. Now, here's the interesting part. If your brain can create those physical symptoms, it also works in reverse. You can influence your mental state by deliberately changing your physical state. That's the brain-body connection in action. It's not just one way. It's a two-way conversation. The nervous system plays a central role in this. The brain communicates with the rest of the body through the autonomic nervous system, which has two main branches: the sympathetic, which is responsible for alertness, energy, and stress responses, think fight or flight, and the parasympathetic, which governs rest, recovery, and calm, rest and digest. What most people don't realize is that we can actually shift between these states on purpose. We can learn to activate the parts of the system that serve us best in the moment. That's when things start to change, not just in how we feel, but in how we perform, how we recover, and how we show up in our daily lives. For example, one of the fastest ways to change your mental state is through physical cues, and I don't just mean exercise. Even something as small as standing tall, opening up your posture, and taking a deep, slow breath can send a powerful signal to your brain. That signal says, I'm safe, I'm in control. The brain responds by dialing down stress hormones, increasing mental clarity, and allowing more access to calm, focused states. On the other hand, if you're hunched over, breathing shallowly, and looking down, you're sending a very different message. You're telling the brain to stay alert, on edge, even when there's no real threat. Over time, that loop creates chronic stress, but it can be reversed. We often think we need to fix our mind first before we take action. Once I feel motivated, then I'll go for a run. Or once I calm down, then I'll breathe deeply. But that's actually backward. The truth is, taking action, even a small physical action, can create the mental state we're waiting for. You don't have to feel confident to act confident. You just need to take the actions that tell your brain, this is what confidence looks like, and then the brain starts to follow suit. There's even deeper science behind this. The body sends continuous feedback to the brain through the vagus nerve, a kind of superhighway of information running from the body's organs back up to the brainstem. The quality of that feedback, whether it's stressed, calm, energized, or fatigued, shapes how your brain responds, what kind of hormones it releases, how focused or scattered your thoughts become. By learning to tune the body through breath, posture, movement, even the way we use our vision, we're tuning the signals going up to the brain. And those signals drive everything from mood to metabolism. So, improving health isn't just about what you eat or how many hours you sleep. It's also about understanding this deeper communication between body and brain and taking conscious control of it. Because when you train the body to support the brain and the brain to guide the body, you're no longer stuck in cycles of stress, fatigue, or poor performance. You become your own operator, steering both systems toward better energy, deeper focus, and more sustainable health. And it all starts with choosing to engage the loop, not waiting for your mind to change, but using your body to lead the way. One of the most powerful, yet often overlooked, tools we have to influence our health and mental state is right under our nose, literally. It's our breath. Most people treat breathing as just a background function. It happens automatically, and we don't think much about it. But when we bring conscious awareness to how we breathe, we gain access to something incredibly valuable: direct control over the nervous system. Breathing is unique in that it's both automatic and voluntary. You don't have to think about it to stay alive, but the moment you decide to change your breath pattern, Whether it's slowing it down, speeding it up, or changing its rhythm, you start to shift your internal state. That's not just psychological, it's physiological. The breath is a direct line into the autonomic nervous system, the same system that governs stress, calm, energy, digestion, immune function, and more. Now, let's go a level deeper. Every inhale slightly speeds up your heart rate. Every exhale slightly slows it down. This natural rhythm, called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, is a reflection of how well your nervous system is adapting moment to moment. When you take longer exhales than inhales, you're telling your body to activate the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. That's the one responsible for relaxation, digestion, and recovery. If you want to calm down quickly, one of the most effective things you can do is simply inhale for a count of about 4 seconds and exhale for 6 or 8 seconds. That longer exhale taps directly into your body's ability to slow down, stabilize, and relax. There's another tool worth mentioning here, the physiological sigh. This is a pattern your body actually uses naturally, especially when crying or after a long day. It's a double inhale followed by a long exhale, something like a short breath in, followed by a second, slightly deeper breath in, and then a slow exhale. What this does is open the small sacs in your lungs that collapse during shallow breathing and release carbon dioxide efficiently. It's a built-in stress reset. Just 2 or 3 of these sighs, done intentionally, can bring your heart rate down and shift your brain into a calmer state within seconds. Now here's where this gets really exciting. You don't need 20 minutes of meditation to feel the benefits. While long-form practices have value, the ability to use your breath on demand is the real skill. You can use breathwork before a big presentation, during a moment of anxiety, or even to wind down for sleep. You're not relying on external tools, devices, or supplements. You're using what your body already has intelligently. Over time, as you become more familiar with using your breath as a tool, you'll start to notice how reactive or grounded your nervous system is on a daily basis. You'll recognize patterns. Maybe you hold your breath when overwhelmed or breathe high and shallow in your chest when anxious. These are all cues, and once you're aware of them, you can intervene early. A few slow breaths, a long exhale, and you're not just managing stress. You're training your nervous system to recover faster and perform better. What's more, breath control isn't just about calm. It can also be used to increase alertness and focus. Fast, rhythmic breathing patterns, like those used in certain forms of high-intensity training, can energize the body and sharpen your attention. So depending on the state you want, whether it's calm or energize, you can tailor your breathing accordingly. It's like having a dial you can turn in either direction whenever you need to, and here's the deeper point. When you train your breath, your training agency, you're teaching your mind and body that you're not a passive passenger on the roller coaster of stress, distraction, or fatigue. You're the driver. You can shift gears. You can regulate. And that simple truth, that you're not stuck, that you can intervene, creates a new level of confidence and health from the inside out. All of that begins with the simple act of taking control of a single breath. We often think of movement as something we do purely for physical fitness, for burning calories, building muscle, or improving flexibility. And while those benefits are real, they barely scratch the surface of what movement does for us. Movement is one of the most effective tools we have to shift our brain state, regulate our emotions, and build long-term mental resilience. In fact, when used intentionally, physical movement becomes a lever for upgrading how the brain functions across every domain, from focus and mood to creativity and memory. One of the reasons for this is how closely tied movement is to the release of neurochemicals. When we move, especially when we engage in purposeful, rhythmic activities like walking, running, cycling, or swimming, the brain responds by increasing the production of dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. These chemicals improve mood, enhance motivation, and help regulate the stress response. but they also increase something even more important for long-term health, neuroplasticity. That's the brain's ability to rewire itself, to learn, adapt, and grow. So when we move, we're not just working the body, we're creating a brain that's more capable of learning and changing. Even light movement matters. A simple walk, especially outdoors, can have a powerful resetting effect on the brain. It boosts blood flow, increases oxygen delivery to the brain, and reduces mental fatigue. You might have noticed that when you're stuck on a problem or feeling mentally foggy, just standing up and walking around can spark clarity. That's not an accident. The way the body moves shapes the way the brain processes information. And the beauty of this is that you don't need to push yourself to exhaustion to get the benefits. Just breaking up long periods of sitting with a few minutes of movement can completely shift your focus and energy. There's also a powerful connection between the body's movement and the balance of the nervous system. When you engage in steady, rhythmic movement, especially at a moderate pace, you activate what's called forward ambulation. This has a direct calming effect on the brain. It helps lower cortisol, stabilize the heart rate, and shift your system out of a stressed or anxious state. That's why going for a walk after a tense conversation or stressful event often feels like hitting a reset button. It's not just emotional release, it's biological rebalancing. And movement doesn't just affect the moment you're in, it sets the tone for what comes after. Regular physical activity improves sleep quality, enhances your immune system, and sharpens your ability to focus for longer periods of time. In short, it gives your brain more energy to spend where it matters most. It also increases resilience, meaning that when life throws you off balance, your system is better equipped to recover quickly. The key is to think of movement not just as exercise, but as a state-shifting tool, something you can use strategically throughout the day. Whether it's a walk between meetings, a few minutes of stretching after sitting too long, or a deliberate workout designed to lift your energy or calm your nerves, movement gives you access to the levers that govern your brain and body's internal rhythms. And once you realize that, you stop waiting to feel better before you move, and you start moving as a way to feel better. Most people don't realize that the eyes are actually part of the brain. During early development, the eyes form as an extension of the brain itself, which means how we use our vision has a direct impact on how our nervous system functions. We tend to think of vision as simply a way to take in the world, to read, to recognize faces, to see where we're going. But the way we direct our gaze also shapes our internal state. In other words, where and how you look can change how you feel. Here's what happens when you focus your vision narrowly. For example, when you're staring at a screen or locked into a tight task, you activate circuits in the brain that increase alertness. That's useful when you need to concentrate, but over time, it also starts to increase internal stress. It shifts your system into a more elevated, vigilant state. Now think about what happens when you step outside and look at a wide landscape, or just relax your gaze so you can see more of your environment. That panoramic vision activates completely different neural circuits. It tells the brain and body we're safe, we can calm down, and within seconds your heart rate drops, your breathing slows, and your nervous system begins to shift out of stress and into balance. This is incredibly powerful, especially in today's world where we spend so much time with our vision locked in on close-up tasks, phones, computers, even conversations across a table. These prolonged periods of narrow vision keep us in a low-grade state of stress even when there's no external threat. And the truth is, if you never shift out of that state, it starts to wear on you mentally, physically, and emotionally. But the fix is simple. Learn to use your visual system to steer your state. Let's say you're feeling anxious, overwhelmed, or distracted. One of the fastest ways to regulate that is to step back and expand your field of view. You don't even need to move your head, just soften your gaze and try to see the room around you without focusing on anything in particular. This kind of visual anchoring taps into the parasympathetic nervous system and brings you back into a more grounded state. It's like taking a deep breath, but with your eyes. On the other hand, if you need to get focused, let's say you're preparing for a big task or trying to get into deep work, you can do the opposite. Narrow your vision, focus on a single point, and you'll notice a slight increase in alertness and readiness. The key is learning to switch between these modes as needed. You're not stuck in one state, you have control. Your eyes aren't just seeing the world, they're telling your brain how to respond to it. This is a subtle, often invisible part of the brain-body connection, but it's one of the most immediate and effective tools you have. Your visual system isn't just passive, it's active, it's constantly influencing your internal state. When you learn to use it intentionally, you gain a new kind of control over how you feel, how you perform, and how well you recover from stress. Sometimes the fastest way to shift your mind is by simply shifting your gaze. If there's one area of health that has an outsized impact on everything else, mental clarity, physical recovery, emotional stability, it's sleep. But not just the number of hours you sleep. What really matters is the quality and consistency of your sleep, and how well it aligns with your body's natural rhythms. That alignment starts with understanding your circadian rhythm, the internal clock that governs when you feel alert, when you feel sleepy, and how your brain and body cycle through energy across a 24-hour day. The circadian system is incredibly sensitive to light. In fact, light is the main signal that sets and stabilizes your internal clock. When you get bright light in your eyes, especially natural sunlight early in the day, it sends a message to the brain that it's time to be alert, focused, and active. That kickstarts a cascade of hormonal and neurological events that influence everything from metabolism to immune function. But here's the part most people miss. That morning light doesn't just affect your energy during the day. It also plays a major role in when you'll start to feel sleepy later on, and how deeply you'll sleep once you do. When you don't get enough natural light in the early part of the day, especially within the first hour or two of waking, it throws off that internal rhythm. You might feel groggier in the morning, less alert during the day, and then struggle to fall asleep at night. It's not a lack of willpower, it's a mismatch between your lifestyle and your biology. But the solution is simple. Aim to get at least 5 to 10 minutes of sunlight in your eyes in the morning, ideally without sunglasses and not through glass. On cloudy days, it might take a little longer, but the signal still gets through. Just as light in the morning helps anchor your rhythm, avoiding bright lights, especially overhead or blue light, the evening helps your system wind down. When you dim the lights and limit screen exposure after sunset, you allow melatonin, the hormone that signals sleep, to rise naturally. That sets the stage for deeper, more restorative sleep. And the deeper you sleep, the more your brain and body can recover, physically, emotionally, cognitively. That's when memory consolidates, inflammation decreases, and mental clarity is reset for the next day. So if you want to improve your health at every level, start by honoring your internal rhythm. A consistent sleep schedule, paired with smart light exposure, can completely transform your energy, mood, and focus. Sleep isn't just a passive state of rest. It's your body's most powerful form of repair. The brain-body connection doesn't just exist in moments of stress, focus, or movement. It also plays a central role in how we manage emotions and build long-term resilience. Emotions are not just abstract thoughts or fleeting feelings, they're full body experiences. When you feel anger, sadness, joy, or fear, your entire system is involved. Your heart rate changes, your breathing shifts, your posture reflects it, and your brain maps it across networks that link memory, behavior, and physiology. Learning to recognize and work with those responses in real time is a core part of strengthening that connection. One of the most valuable things you can do is start paying attention to where and how emotions show up in your body. Do you feel anxiety as tightness in your chest, Do you notice your jaw clenching when you're frustrated? Is there a sense of heaviness in your shoulders when you're overwhelmed? These physical cues are signals. They often show up before you're fully conscious of what you're feeling. When you get better at noticing them, you also get better at regulating them before they take over, but this doesn't mean avoiding emotion or pushing it down. In fact, the opposite is true. Emotions carry important information. They tell you when something matters, when something's off, or when something needs your attention. The key is being able to feel them fully without letting them hijack your behavior. That's where body awareness and breath come in, slowing your breathing, grounding your feet, even adjusting your posture. These small shifts tell your nervous system that you're safe enough to stay present. And from that place, you can process emotion instead of reacting automatically to it. Another piece of this is how we recover from emotional stress. Just like the body needs rest after intense physical activity, the nervous system needs space to reset after emotional challenges. Taking a walk, journaling, using breath work, or even simply sitting in silence for a few minutes can help shift your system out of activation and into repair. The more often you do this, the more capacity you build. You're not just surviving stress, you're training for it. This is the foundation of emotional resilience, not the absence of stress or difficulty, but the ability to stay connected to your body and mind in the midst of it. That connection gives you the tools to respond instead of react, to recover instead of burn out, and to grow stronger over time. The better you understand your internal signals, the better you navigate your external world. So when we talk about improving health through a stronger brain-body connection, we're really talking about learning to work with the systems already built into us: our breath, our movement, our vision, our sleep, our emotional responses. These aren't abstract ideas. They're tools we can use daily in real time to shift how we feel, think, and perform. The more we understand how our brain and body communicate, the more agency we gain over our health, our focus, and our lives. And that agency is what ultimately creates lasting change, not from outside in, but from inside out.